Hey guys, this is White Manga here with a new video on how to use Manga Studio in a smart and easy way. Starting off, if you don't know me, I am the creator of Apple Black. Volume 1 is currently available, and Volume 2 will be available this fall. The way things are looking, probably in December. Hopping into this video, the basic first things you'd want to know is you'd need to understand the lasso tool and the selection tool and just the idea behind layers when it comes to digital artwork. So here is like a template. Then this is the template I've created for myself, and I already have these layers ready to tone anything I want to tone, and it's going to make a whole lot more sense as we move forward. So I pick, once you're on that layer, if you're on any tool like a pen tool or a pencil, it's going to work in that layer, right? So the color, the layer is different from regular layers where you can just color stuff. It's just going to act according to what layer is on. So each layer there is a tone layer, and that layer has been designed to have a specific tone. It's still editable, but each layer kind of does its own thing. I have that one. I usually use that for things similar to anything comedic in the background. That one's almost similar, but a little more. The dots are so much more close. They're closer to each other and smaller. And I use these to tone the pages. And in a second, I'm going to show you how you can create your own template in Manga Studio 5, and you can use this template for all of your pages. So this could be the beginning of all your pages. Now I'm just going to show you how to use these tones, and then you can make tones darker and all that. So for each scenario, I have a tone ready. I have a tone designed for each thing, whatever it be, for trees, whether toning trees, toning skin, all sorts of toning, and you'll see in a second. So here I'm going to create. You can use these dimensions, but again, all that stuff depends on you as an artist and what kind of dimensions you want to use. But you can follow the dimensions there, and I'm just going to create a new canvas. As you can see, you have those two layers there, layer 1 and the paper layer. The paper layer is just the white, and if you delete that, it's just going to be the layer 1, and layer 1 is just going, it's basically there's nothing on layer 1, so it's going to be transparent. So what I did here is I selected that spot, and in layer 1, what you can do, and again, this is like an observational thing, so if you have Manga Studio, you can just follow me, and you see I clicked on the toning icon, and this is where you adjust things. And one, you can leave it, if you just leave it how it is, which is what I usually do because it's what I want. I have things where I want to maybe make him darker in the future, but as is, that's how I just create that tone. And for now, let's call that a CTS. And for me, you can name it whatever you want, but to me a CTS is basically just close to screen, and as things that are really close to the camera or the viewer, I usually tone those, and it'll make more sense later. So here, there's another way to do it. Once you hit those dialog boxes, you have all these options already created. Think of them like default tones and presets and things like that, and you can just click and drag the one you want. And even after you click and drag, you can still edit them. I'm just showing you different ways of adding tone, right? I can still do exactly what I did for the previous layer with this new way of just clicking the dialog box rather than clicking on the tone icon like we just did. And there's even an extra way of adding tone where you can just and I'll do that in a second. So here, this is where you can edit the tone. You can make things darker. You can play with it. I strongly suggest that you guys play around with the software, and you'll be able to come up with some gems and things that will be unique to you for your own style. And here we're going to name this something else. And we're going to call that clothes, and that's usually for things where if I'm ever going to tone clothes, that's what I do. Here is similar to what we did before, but I'm just going to make it darker, just a bit darker, and I'm gonna call it black skin. Again, you can add tone in so many different ways. I'm just showing you, I just gave you several examples, so just to show you that there's more than one way to do it. And I'm creating all these. I've created all those layers, and each layer is different. But now I'm going to delete what we created. I'm not going to delete the layer, so I just selected all of them, and then you go to the layer and you delete. Once I'm done with that, or you can just select all of them, and once you're on that layer, you can even use the eraser tool to delete it, erase it off. Here we've taken our layer and we took it to the top of everything. Once you understand layers, you also know that they matter in the sense of where they're placed, right? So if a layer is above another layer, the layer that's above, it's going to be above also on the paper itself. So now I'm just going to import the page that I want to tone. And for details on this, I have separate videos going in detail of me creating the pages and things like that. But you should still be able to follow. Here I have dots on the pages kind of notifying me where I want cut off in the page and what I want to show and what I want to cut off. And so I just drag, and once I'm done with that, you rasterize the layer, because if you just import and you place it there, you can't edit the page. So you have to rasterize the page before you can edit it. So just putting it in as it is, you can't edit it. You go in there, you click, you double or you right click on that layer, that's the layer you just imported in, which is the page, and you click on rasterize. And then you can play around with it, you can edit it, you can do whatever. And at this point, scanning in, you might still, from the drawing itself, this is like from raw, this is like the traditional part of things. I'm just showing you an extra way where you can change that, click on noise, and that's like an extra layer that I forgot to put in. And what I do with the noise is I actually use it to tone in trees, even though there aren't that many trees on this page, but we'll get to that. And I'm just going to rename it and call it trees. But after I'm done with that, what I end up doing is I go in the white spaces, like I clean it up. So I make sure I'm on the layer that's the page layer, and that's basically the page itself, the untoned page. And I erase like the things that look dirty. I go to the panel lines and I make sure that at the edges they're clean. Inside the word bubbles, like there isn't like dots and things like that. So because sometimes when you're drawing and you erase with a pencil or something, or maybe you forgot to erase some parts and you can still see some pencil marks after you scan, I erase those. And I don't erase them traditionally. What I do is I select all that space. Like I just selected all that space and I filled in with white. Because what happens if you just use the eraser and you just erase, it's going to erase the paper itself, right? The paper is one layer. Everything is one flat layer. So if you erase it, it'll become transparent. So what I do is I fill it in with white. So it's almost like I'm going over the paper with I'm filling in with white to clean all the dirty spots, any spot that I see that's dirty. So if you zoom in here, well, there's nothing wrong there. I find another spot and I'm going to zoom in. And if I see anything that needs to be cleaned up, I just select that place and I fill in with white. Or I use a pen tool or a brush tool, and I brush or use the pen in white, in color white, rather than erasing. So we're going to rename that layer to line art. And on that layer, I kind of treat it, I still play around with it and fill in blacks, all the things that I want to be filled in black. So as you can see, I use the lasso tool, and I just selected the character's pants. For those who read the comic, you know that's Jekyll, Sir Jekyll, and the other character is Caesar, who some of you should have seen by now, at least in some other videos. And that's how I fill in with blacks. Obviously, I could have done that traditionally, the same way I did those exclamation marks. And you could have filled in with black traditionally. But, to save ink, sometimes I fill in with the computer. It's much faster, saves ink. Yeah, everyone wins. Everybody wins. And even that exclamation mark, what I can then do sometimes is pick a pen and pick a color white and just clean it up. Make it just look a little more presentable. The goal here at this editing phase is basically to make sure that the pages are presentable, they look professional, they're not dirty. So you're cleaning everything you need, anything you need to clean up, toning what you, well, I'm not doing the toning yet, but I'm just giving you an example of how I would tone. And sometimes, in some cases where if you select and you shaded some spots so you don't get the whole thing, you can then use a pen or a brush, preferably a pen, because a brush has some like gradient things, funky gradient things going on. But use a pen tool and you just manually go in there. So here Caesar is a character of color, so like I'm toning in his hand over there. And these are, to me, I call them the initial tones, and sometimes that's all you need, but I'll explain later why I call them the initial tones or the primary tones, and there will be like a secondary one if necessary. And in this case it is necessary, and I'll explain. So here you can do that way, you just use the pen and you just go over it, and then you would take the eraser and you just erase the edges. And here you can erase, you don't need to fill in with white. It's what you're supposed to do is erase because you're on that layer, so that layer is just that tone, right? And that's the layer that's representing the black skin, so you don't have to worry about anything. But what I've done here now is I've clicked on the CTS, and like I said, the CTS is, usually when I tone things that are too close to the viewer, and it also adds some mystery to the panel, where you have these characters towering over the other guy that's on the ground, and they're supposed to be mysterious at this point, so toning them completely also adds some mystery. There are also other reasons why you'd want to tone them completely, and I'll get to that. And as you can see, it's a layer that it's different from the original tones. So because I'm toning everything here, and this is also another thing you need to take into account, is that this is my style, so this is how I do things. Some people don't do this, but I tone over the dark skin, so even though everything is toned, you can still see the difference in tone when it comes to the character's skin and the clothing itself, unless they were all white to begin with. But in the Caesar's case, where he's a character of color, when I do the CTS and I'm toning over it again, the skin should be darker than everything else as well. Again, some other comics don't do this, but I do. And what else? And again, if you don't get everywhere with the lasso tool or the selection tool, I usually then manually do it, and then from here you can then use the eraser to clean things up. I make sure there's no tone inside the word bubbles to affect any of the words at all and things like that. And that's, for the most part, at this point, these are the easy things I'd say you'd need to know to tone a page. Everything else is pretty, you can do more complex stuff, but for the basics, this is the best way to go. And what I do is I have the tones ready, and when I put in the page, all I have to do is just select and fill. What I did there, where I just used the brush tool and I selected, I just brushed over the back. So I'm also giving that CTS to the ground as well, because it's also close to the viewer. And then I just selected outside the panel and I deleted that. So you also remember, you're treating everything as separate. You're treating almost everything, especially when it comes to the toning aspect of things. You're treating them as separate layers, right? That's the key thing to note. And you would kind of apply that to everything else. So you have Caesar here. I'm just going to select, and I fill in with the skin, or just I have like a separate layer for characters of color. And once I've done that, some of it got into his eye because there's an opening in the eye, and what I simply do is I erase that out. Another thing to know is that the tone layers are different from regular layers. So if these were just regular layers, and let's say I was using color, and I colored pink, and then I colored over it with red, and the red was on a separate layer, and that red was above the pink layer, then you see the red before you see the pink. The reason why the tone here kind of goes over it, this is a different type of layer. So the tone, if I put down a tone, regardless of where it's placed in the layer box, it will still it will almost just multiply the tone and just make it look darker. And that's what happened with Caesar's hand in the third panel, where I toned over it with skin, and then I toned over it with the CTS. Even though the CTS is like the first, it's like when it comes to the tones, it's like the last panel. It's usually you wouldn't see it if it was a normal panel, but you still see it because it's a tone layer. So they work differently. Here for blood, I'm toning in blood, and sometimes you can just fill it in with black. Another thing to keep in mind with filling in is once, especially if you use this lasso tool and you select, and sometimes you can by mistake select spots you don't want, and that's usually because there's a hole somewhere. So you just have to make sure that it's a closed area with the ink, and it kind of uses contrast to know whether it's closed or not. So for manga where you have black lines on white paper, the contrast is almost perfect, especially with how we scanned in the paper when you scan in line art. And I have a video on how to scan manga, so you can check that out. But one key thing to note, when you select anything, select that space, usually here I'm just doing it simply because this is just like a test. I just want to show you how the software works and how I use it today. But usually when you select a spot, you want to expand it, and you want to expand it at least by at least one pixel before you fill in, because sometimes when you select, you don't see that much with tones. But if it was let's say if we were coloring a character, you want to expand that selection at least by 1 pixel before you fill in. And I have examples of this in how to color manga or color anime style or whatever, and I also leave a link to that video. And I think so far so good for this video. You kind of know the basics. There's more to it. There's more to learning gradients and how to tone in skies, and there's several ways to do that. And if you guys want to see more of that, you can leave a comment in the section, comment below, and I'll get to it. But here you have a Manga Studio layer, Manga Studio type of file you can save as, and that's an LIP file, and that'll basically just save your layers. But if you save as a JPEG, and it'll just flatten the whole image. And this is how the image will look when this is how the image looked when I was done. Actually see things I maybe do put a little tweaks here and there. But if you're interested to see and watch me tone this whole page, that'll be based on how this video does. So if this video performs well, so basically you guys should like this video, leave comments, and I'll have a video doing the whole page, and we'll see how that works out. And I'll show you how I toned this page from start to finish, all the skies and everything. So yeah, that's been it, guys. It's been fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and yeah, that's it. It's Why Manga, and I'm outie.